Ever.
Well, thanks everyone for attending my talk. So I'm here to talk about how inconsistent security policies, lazy contractors, and just neglected practices can really create an exposure for your office or your data center or whatever facility you're trying to protect. It's not meant to be an encyclopedia of how to break into a building, but it'll get you thinking on how some low-tech techniques and just how you can use things you find around the office to get into places you shouldn't. So here's a little bit of the agenda, a disclaimer. Any good talk has to have a disclaimer. Who I am, why you really care about physical security, how to really own your office, some of the exterior vulnerabilities, interior vulnerabilities, and then just a quick summary. But before I begin, I want to declare that this talk will be subject to the U-Drink protocol. The U-Drink protocol is something that Deviant had put together last year to make talks a little bit more interactive between the speaker and the audience. So basically, the presenter will share with the audience, one of their favorite drinks, give a little bit of background on it, show the recipe, actually make a batch of it on stage, and then whenever the speaker messes up the materials or makes a mistake or is just an idiot, the audience can call him on it and he has to take a drink. Also, when a member of the audience asks a really good question or calls the presenter out on bullshit that they're spitting out, the audience member will get a drink as well. So it's fun times for all. So the drink I wanted to talk about first was a Dark and Stormy. It's a drink that is popular in the British Commonwealth countries, particularly in the Bermuda area as well as Australia. And what that drink is, it's usually 2 parts dark rum, 3 parts ginger ale, and then a quick splash of lime. Now, the drink that I'm going to be making tonight is only based on this. When I was in Virginia last year, some of my friends showed me how to make this new drink that they called a sailing mishap. It's one part Kraken rum, and then 3 parts real ginger ale. Unfortunately, I couldn't find real ginger ale in Pennsylvania, where I'm from. So what I did was I took cheap ginger ale and put real ginger into it and let it soak for about a day.
Asian power.
So I'll go ahead and make this drink now. So the first thing is, we need to release the Kraken. I think that's about 1 part. And then ginger ale. So I'll pour myself a cup. Yep. We'll have this over here, and Deviant will be my server for whoever in the audience. So who was at the CarolinaCon shot earlier today? Who has a Mickey ticket? So you guys are all going to get a drink. So come on up with your drink tickets. So this morning we had the CarolinaCon shoot, where Deviant and I had some contests, and this is the team that won the contest. So they will get a drink.
He was.
I trust you.
All right.
You're a gentleman and a scholar. You want your Mickey?
You can keep it.
Oh.
Go for it.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. If you have pictures, make sure Caleb gets them. Video of shit blowing up, video of the sheriff showing up.
Do I need to make more?
Yeah, we gotta do it again. Yeah.
Hey, Al.
CarolinaCon shoot.
I think we
2
need more
years
ice.
running, 2 years with the sheriff.
Ice. So I'll make another batch so it's ready. Sure? Oop. Okay.
Sorry, the hotel's under Joe, allusions that I'm not an alcoholic.
Got it? Okay.
Hey, if you want to be on speaker.
There's
Oh,
some
sure.
second-
Yeah.
Right here.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
you go. Okay, so now time for the disclaimer. This presentation is intended for education and entertainment purposes only. The views expressed are only of the author and not of his employer, colleagues, or pets. I want to keep my job, okay? Because I took some of these pictures at my office. And don't try this at work without permission, because you might get in trouble. Facilities or a director of physical security might get pissed off, because people don't like to be pointed out when they have flaws. So who's Dr. Tran? Sorry, oops, sorry, that's the wrong one. Okay, that's me. So by day, I'm a security professional for a corporate overlord. I work in the financial services industry, so I get to see a lot of interesting things that happen. I like to take things apart. I like to take cars apart, electronics, whatever it is. I've been picking locks for about 2 years now, so I don't really consider myself an expert at all, so don't have any illusions of that. I like working on motor vehicles, and for those who saw my t-shirt earlier, I'm kind of a nerd as well. So really, why do you care about physical security? You may have some great firewalls, some great logical security controls, but at the end of the day, physical access is just the same as logical access. You can walk right in, plug in a console cable to a router switch or firewall, and start changing things. You can get into a building, plug a laptop in, and have full LAN access. A lot of corporations still have flat networks. A lot of places still don't have very good DMZ architectures or segregation of databases versus applications. And then finally, someone can walk in and plug in a Wi-Fi access point and then hack the rest of your system from the parking lot later when they have time. Also, a lot of people have encryption on their laptops now, but what about desktops? Desktop hard drives are pretty easy to pull out, especially those Dell machines that have the nice rails where you just pop the case open, pull the hard drive out with 2 little clips, that's it. If you have a lot of customer data on that hard drive or confidential information, that's gone. And how many companies still have sacks of paper or documents with customer information or passwords or whatever it is just sitting there, especially if it's a call center where there's customer service involved, credit card processing. I've seen call centers where there are call center representatives writing down credit card numbers for notes because they have to go to another machine to process that credit card, and they just leave that sitting out on their desk. And then finally, shiny things. I know I leave my Android phone sitting on my cube. I don't lock it up in a cabinet when I walk away. Someone can walk in and just start stealing expensive stuff. So it's not just about the data they can steal, but the physical assets of the company or employees. So most buildings aren't secured like government agencies. And at the end of the day, they really don't have to be. You really have to go use a risk-based approach where you look at what are the risks to your company, what are the crown jewels that could be stolen physically, not just logically. So whether it's customer information that may be on paper files or physical assets like a manufacturing company. So I want to talk about how the inconsistencies on how a company may implement physical security or just security in general, some of the laziness in implementing those controls, and then the neglect in exercising those controls. So the first thing I want to talk about were the exterior vulnerabilities. Most of this stuff will actually, for the exterior, will be more social engineering than actual technique. Like with most things, it's nice and hard on the outside, but soft and squishy on the inside. I think Al knows all about that, right?
That's why I left him.
Thank you. So the first thing, when you go through a front door, you usually greet it. Oh, there it is. You're greeted with a receptionist, someone who's very helpful, who's willing to show you where you need to go. But at the end of the day, yes.
This is your office again?
No comment. But at the end of the day, a receptionist is not a security guard. A receptionist is there to be helpful, to route people where they need to be. They're not there to stop, challenge, and make someone's life difficult. A security guard is there to do that. And then you have a lobby for multi-tenant buildings, like especially in New York City, where you have multiple tenants in a building. You have a lobby. Everyone has an RFID badge these days to swipe in, or at least to have a badge at work. I don't think I've ever seen a company that does not have a badge or some type of identification for their facility, unless it's like a small mom and pop shop. Most of the time, these badges are RFID, and you're required to scan. Now, unlike in the movies, your picture is not stored on the badge. You can't hack the badge and put another picture in it if you hack it, if you steal a badge. What happens on the back end is this badge has a number assigned to it. When you swipe that badge, it'll spit out number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the back end system, it'll correlate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 belongs to this person, he has access, and then your mugshot's going to come up on that badge. So, so in the movies and shows like 24, it's not accurate. You can't hack a badge and put your own picture in it if you find one laying on the street. And really, the control is for a lobby security is when you swipe that badge and your mugshot comes up, a security guard is supposed to look and make sure that you are who you are and not some random person who may have just taped a picture on the badge. There's some facilities that don't require a swipe through the front door. They just make sure you have a badge. If you think about it, in the morning when everyone's rushing into the office, how carefully are those security guards going to be looking at those badges? I mean, you could probably have a blank piece of card and just flash that, and they'll let you in. And then what if like someone with a with an official-looking badge just walks in and says, "Oh, I need to work on your telecom equipment," or "I need to look at this," or UPS or FedEx. Is security really trained to stop and challenge and verify that they are supposed to be there? I mean, the real ideal setup is to have the security guard who's looking at the pictures stand maybe at least 10 feet away from the reader. So they have time to actually look at the picture and compare it to the person walking up. Because during the morning rush hour, if you have like a torrent of people coming in, they're not going to be able to scan everyone's face and confirm they are who they are. And then also security should be trained to never allow anyone in without verification. So even if someone official looking comes in, they're not going to let them in. And then when we want to talk about the back door or the loading dock, people like to, the front door is what most people see, so security is going to pay the most attention to the front door. But what about that back door where shipments might be coming in or facilities needs to move equipment in? I mean, is that secure? So the first thing is, are those doors closed? Are they propped open with a brick that says "door stop, do not move"? You have to make sure that facilities and security knows that you have to treat their back door the same as their front door. That goes back to consistency. Why are you going to treat one door more securely than the other? Do you have the proper monitoring controls? Is there someone there? You're probably not going to have a security guard or receptionist in the back door or loading dock, but you will in the front door. So you need something to keep track of what's going on back there. And then access control. Is it the same type of access control? Do you have the same key control systems, the same type of high security locks as your front and back door? And then finally, do you even have a fence? If there's no fence around, someone can casually come out of the woods and come in through the back door, and someone may not notice. It's a little more obvious if someone's hopping a fence trying to get in than someone just walking off the street. And then there's a smoker's entrance, which I like to call the side door. I mean, how many people here are smokers? Not that many.
I thought we were in the South.
Yeah, they're probably outside smoking right now. So usually a smoker's entrance is not really designed to be a smoker's entrance. It's just a side door that smokers like to use. And for those who are smokers, you know, no matter what the weather is out there, you're going to go out there to get your fix. And there's also camaraderie between smokers. I mean, the world's out to get you. You can't even smoke in bars anymore in Philadelphia. So there's a little bit of camaraderie. So if there's a fellow smoker out there that says, "Oh, hey, it's really cold out here. I left my badge inside. You mind buzzing me in so I don't have to walk around?" Smokers are probably going to let you in. So there's a huge piggybacking problem there. And the solution to that is pretty simple. You just have a fenced-in or secured smoking area. So that way, someone off the street can't hang out with the smokers and pretend to be an employee that left their badge inside, so that way they can piggyback in. I mean, your smoking area doesn't have to be as fancy as this. It could be as simple as a fence. but depending on your fire code, you may want to make sure you have a fire exit too. So if everyone exits that door, that they're not trapped. So with a lot of the exterior vulnerabilities, as I mentioned, they're more or less social engineering, taking advantage of the human factor, because the human is the weakest link. Computers just knows ones and zeros, whether you're allowed access or you're not. While a person, there's a whole gradient of gray that you can take advantage of. But with interior vulnerabilities, this is the fun stuff. This is the fun stuff now. You can just basically pick up stuff you find around the office and get into places you're not supposed to be. So motion sensors. A lot of people, you'll see a lot of offices that have those double glass doors, RFID badge to swipe in. But when you exit, you don't need to badge out or do anything. That's because there's a motion sensor. So when you walk up, it trips, allows you in. And depending on the placement of the sensor, the type of doors, you can actually open that with a simple manila folder. If you saw back in the photo, there will be a very large gap between the glass doors and a motion sensor. So what can trip a motion sensor? Motion. So all you have to do is casually walk up and just slip that folder through that slit, kind of throw it. That'll trip the motion sensors nine times out of 10. And I've tried it, and it works. Yes, that too, but that looks a little suspicious. Well, if you're walking up to a door with a folder or a stack of papers, you just look like someone who belongs there.
He's going to get to that now.
Yes, it depends. A lot of people don't tune that properly. And those motion sensors, they not only detect motion, but they also detect temperature gradients. So you can actually use a can of compressed air flipped upside down to create a cloud of cold air to trip off the sensors. So
That'll flow.
yeah, and that'll flow. So this is an example. This is an unknown office building. So I'm closing the door, rattling to make sure it's locked. Then I have a can of compressed air with me. So with motion sensor, actually you can get him a drink since he made a really good comment about tuning. So you can tune these motion sensors, so that way you could either put the sensors further back, tune them to be not as sensitive in a certain direction. You can do all types of things. Now, if you move the sensor further back, you of course have to time it, so that way when someone walks towards the door, once they're out of the range of the sensor, that they don't walk into the door. So you have to be careful on how you tune that. You have to make sure someone's watching the cameras too, which you'll see later on. Oh, yes. When I was using Google Image to try to find some pictures of people walking into doors, I did a search for people walking into doors, and almost every single picture was a picture of Justin Bieber walking into a glass wall. I don't know why that came up as number 1 through 10, but I thought that was kind of funny. And then another alternative is to have one of those push-to-exit signs, or buttons. Now you can use a combination where during the day you can trip the sensor to open the door, but maybe after hours you can't walk in with a can of air to try to open doors where you have to push a button. So you can play around with different combinations depending on what the risk is for your building. Are you really worried about people breaking in or not? So you can use a combination of these buttons. Now, of course, make sure that the button is in a place where someone can't reach in with a coat hanger to push a button. Because I have seen garages and parking garages where you can reach in around the gate and press the button to open the door. I wish I had a picture of that.
Great.
So doors. Everyone knows what a door is. A door is your first line of defense against someone breaking into your office or breaking into a data center or breaking into anything. But just like with, who's ever been to Lockpick Village and picked locks? So for those who have not raised your hand, I expect to see everyone tomorrow at the Lockpick Village. So just like locks, loose tolerances through poor manufacturing or installation can cause vulnerabilities. The same with doors. If you install a door improperly or the tolerances on a door is really bad, that's just as good as putting a do not disturb sign. You can get in very, very easily. So a door latch is that spring-loaded thing that keeps the door closed. Everyone has seen it. If not, I don't know what planet you're from. And basically, a door latch operates, since it's spring-loaded, when you close that door, that ramp causes it to close. So you have the door here, the latch, and then the wall or another door if you have double doors. So, of course, you can take advantage of this and just use something, whether it's a piece of plastic or metal, to try to push on that latch to cause it to retract. So you have the door here, the latch, the wall, the shim, and this little hole here is called the latch hole or the latch strike, because there's usually a piece of metal here as well that protects the wall from wearing out. So here's another example of fail. I went on a data center review because my company was outsourcing one of our data centers to a vendor. So I happened to be local, and they said, "Oh, by the way, can you do just a quick physical security walkthrough? The vendor will be there to take you on a tour." So I basically had 10 representatives from the vendor to take me around the dog and pony show to show me how cool everything is. This building, they required me to provide government-issued ID. They took a picture of it. I was always escorted. Every single door required biometrics and a card swipe to get in. So they're taking me on this tour, showing how great the facility is. I pretty much played dumb, like I didn't know anything about physical security. So I started asking dumb questions like, "Oh, is it possible to shim these doors open?" They're like, "Oh, no, that's impossible." But if you notice here, there's no latch guard. The latch is facing me. So I took the visitor badge that they gave me and popped the door open in front of everyone. It was just a complete disaster. After that, as soon as I walked away from that door, they called they actually subcontracted to another company. So they called that subcontract company to come out the next day to fix it. So it was pretty hilarious. They were so confident. Yes? This was the power systems for the entire data center. So I could flip the switch off. And this was the case for almost every single door I ran into. So you always have to inspect the quality, especially if you're outsourcing. Make sure the vendor knows what the heck they're doing. To me, the requirement to scan your card and to have biometrics, that was just to show off to any executives they may be taking tours on. Look at how secure and high-tech the facility is. But really, the low-tech stuff is going to get you, not the high-tech stuff. So here's another picture of another door. Nice expensive electric latch where you swipe the badge and then a solenoid releases this latch so you can pull the door open. Now this time the latch is facing away from me. But this time I got to take some video. I dropped what I was using, so that's what that was. Okay, so did I use like a really neat lock-picking tool? So I took a binder clip, took it apart, just bent it towards an L shape, and just hooked it around behind the latch and pulled. So all those instances could have been mitigated with a latch guard, which is basically just a piece of metal that blocks the shim from getting in. However, going back to tolerances in manufacturing, if this latch strike or latch hole is too large, you can actually push the door, create a gap, and then now you can use a flexible shim to just snake around. And they actually have, I left all my stuff over there, but you can use something like a piece of So you can use a piece of plastic. I mean, this guest badge is probably flexible enough, depending on how large that gap is, to snake around if you give it some good pressure. And then a door jam does the same thing. It's the same vulnerability. If there's a large enough gap, you can slip something in there. Yes?
Do you have any common items and materials you recommend for shipping latches like that? I've rented thousands.
I'll show you in a bit. There's going to be an example. Yes? Yes, I'm going to get to that in a second. So how do you prevent latching? There's actually a type of latch, which is called a dead latch, which is this little piece here. You'll sometimes see some latches have this, some don't. If you have that, that means this is the dead latch. And what a dead latch does is when that is depressed, the latch will not retract unless you use the handle. So the way a dead latch works is when you close a door, this latch will spring out, but the dead latch will stay depressed. When that is depressed, even if you stick a shim in there, that latch won't move because it's locked. The only way of getting that latch to retract is to use the door handle. Now you can still shim a dead latch depending on the tolerances of the door. If the latch guard, or if there's no lack of a latch guard, or the latch guard is too loose, you can actually pull the door towards you just a little bit, just enough for that dead latch to pop out. And then now you can shim it, just like a normal latch. That dead latch basically never comes into play. Now there is a device, something called an Ensuing Latch Guard, which is actually a very nice high security latch guard. It's basically two strips of metal that is both bent into U-shapes. This one here is bolted into the door jamb, while the other one's bolted into the door. With this type of latch guard, there's no way you can slip even a flexible shim in there. And of course, they make models that are maybe 6 inches long just to protect the latch area, but they also make ones that go the full length of the door. So this is actually a very good latch guard that will prevent shimming. Even if you don't have a dead latch, this will work. This will protect your doors. So keep that in mind. If there's a door where there's high-value assets back there, you may want to consider that if you're worried about the tolerances on the door. And this is pretty easy to retrofit. So instead of tearing out the wall, replacing the latch strike with something with tighter tolerances, you can install that, and you're good to go. So here's another example. So this is actually a door jamb. This is a door that has a dead latch in it. And then this is, of course, an unknown building. So what did I use? Did I use another really cool tool or anything? No, basically I walked around the office, found a report that had a plastic cover, and ripped it off and used that. So it was just something I found laying around in the office. As I mentioned, this door had a dead latch. However, in this case, the latch strike was so wide that the dead latch was completely useless. Yeah, it's not really aftermarket. It was. Yeah, it's electronic. Yeah. So they basically sized this wrong. They got the wrong dead latch for the latch, the wrong latch strike. So this goes back to laziness. If your contractors are not thinking things through and just installing whatever, that could create a problem. And also, you can see that huge gap. So it didn't make it hard for me to stick that piece of plastic in there. I basically pulled it down. I angled it. I'll go back and see if you can see it. Nope, I don't have a picture. But basically, I put it in at an angle, facing down, and I pulled it down. That's basically all I did. It wasn't that fancy. So here's another video of an example of dead latch fail that Deviant took. Unfortunately, Mac OS X doesn't like the codec, so I have to exit out to show you the video. VLC likes it. Just Keynote does not. This is an abandoned part of the hotel. And that's basically just a hook. That was it.
That was a hotel in Florida. What are you talking about? It says so right on the YouTube.
So now I want to talk about wafer locks, because wafer locks are so pervasive in offices that I just had to talk about it. Wafer locks are really popular because they're very cheap and they're very compact. So there are a lot of applications, especially office furniture, access panels, or anything that requires just a very something that isn't very wide. Yeah, filing cabinets, things that you use to store sensitive documentation, which could be confidential, proprietary, or customer information. That's all stored in there. Now, also with wafer locks, because they're so mass-produced and cheap, of course they're going to go looser tolerances and cheaper. Wafer locks are very susceptible to a raking attack. And if you have any questions about raking, stop by tomorrow at the Lockpick Village. We can do demos and show you all that stuff. So instead of a pin stack like regular pin tumbler locks, you have these metal wafers that move up and down. They actually have specialized tools for picking those, or not really even picking, it's just raking, called tryout keys or jigglers. They're just flat pieces of metal with ridges where you apply tension, just jiggle it up and down to randomly jostle those wafers in place. You're in a way fuzzing the lock. You're throwing it garbage, trying to get it to line up, just so you can turn the lock.
Aren't most lock picks flat pieces of metal with ridges?
Yes. However, with a you give them another refill. However, with a tryout key, it's a tensioner and a rake at the same time. So you only need one. It's a one-handed operation. So you can have your other hands free to do something else, whatever your fancy is.
He means whacking off.
That's because everyone in Tool whacks off while they're picking locks. Yes. Yes, that is a very good point. You can use any piece of metal to jostle that around. So give that man a drink as well. So, I mean, people rely on these wafer locks. I know it's really terrible practice, but some people write their password on Post-it notes and then lock it inside a cabinet with a wafer lock, thinking, oh, it's secure. I mean, here's a prime example that Deviant took a picture of someone with a Post-it note with their password locked inside a wafer lock behind a drawer using a wafer lock. Well, this drawer is obviously open right now, so it wasn't that hard to get in.
It's an amazingly well-organized drawer.
Yeah, I mean, even he has the used Tic Tacs on the inside for easy access, and the nice fresh pack on the outside. Whereas, exactly.
This is the nicest drawer I've ever broken into.
Operational efficiency. So here's another story. So I had a party at work, and someone brought in a huge box of cookies, and there were leftovers after the party. So I locked it in my filing cabinet as like a secret stash of cookies for the next day. Well, come the next day, I had left my badge and my keys at home. But I was damn sure I wanted those cookies. So basically, I took a paper clip and just any flat piece of metal. I happen to have like a server, one of those server keys that you lock like the Dell servers with. I used that as a tensioner and just used basically a straight paper clip and did an overlifting attack, some jiggling, and then those cookies were devoured. Taking out the trash. So most offices also have cleaning staff that take out the trash, dump it into their bin, and do whatever trash people do with it, take it outside. But maybe you should look more carefully. I mean, it looks innocent that someone's taking out the trash, but maybe you should be careful where they're taking that trash from. Oops, yeah, indeed. This is basically a label saying, there's a lot of sensitive data in here. That's just a label asking telling you that there's data in here to go after. And what do they secure these with? Wafer locks. So a cleaning staff with a tryout key or even a paper clip that they find around, who knows how to just jam something in there and twist, they could open that. So you need to be mindful about your trash. I mean, one man's trash is another man's gold, right? So you have to be careful. And here comes cameras. So obviously your security personnel can't be everywhere at the same time. So they rely on cameras to keep an eye on everything. First things, you need to make sure that you have good coverage. I've been to facilities, I mean, not that bad, but I've seen facilities where they don't have cameras facing every single door, where you can almost plot out. So if someone like a cleaning person who already has access to your building can start scoping out, understanding where are the blind spots in your camera coverage, and maybe during their off hours, because of course they have a key to get into everyone's office to take out the trash. They can start selecting which offices they're going to go through, or which route they're going to take to bypass camera coverage. And then is the video feed even recorded? Because sometimes you can't have a security guy in front of watching a million screens at once. You need some way of going back and say, hey, I know the server was stolen last night in the data center. Let's go back and watch who may have done it within this time frame. So make sure, not all places have recording capabilities as well for their cameras. And then having someone actually look at the cameras. This is an unknown building. I just walked right into the camera room and took this picture. So I talked about all these little basic things where all these low-tech attacks can get you in. Almost everything, basically everything I've shown you is stuff you can find around the office to use to make these attacks. So if you go to a facility that pats you down and makes sure that you don't have lock picks on you, or a BlackBerry with a camera because you're not allowed to have cameras or anything, you don't need anything. Everything you need is already in the office. So I mean, you have to worry about really sly criminals breaking in, just using social engineering to get into your external perimeter. But you also have to worry about your third parties, whether it's actually cleaning staff or third-party vendors. There is actually a trend of organized crime ring placing people inside of cleaning companies to get access to buildings, to steal credit card information, gadgets, or whatever it is. So do your cleaning staff or third-party vendors get the same type of scrutiny or background checks as your employees? They have the same access, physical access to the building, so are you going to go put them through the same type of stringent checks? And then especially the insider, someone who already has access to most of your building. I mean, all those videos I took of me walking around the building, I had access to that building. I may not have particularly had access to those rooms or those doors that I got in, but those videos showed that I wasn't looking, it was not suspicious at all. Especially if you pretend to know what you're doing and that you belong there, that's really important. Going back to social engineering. So in summary, use consistent policies and standards. If you're going to do one thing for an executive's door, maybe you should do it for another executive's door. I've seen buildings where there are dead latches on the CFO's office door, but not on the CEO. That makes no sense whatsoever. You have to have a consistent way of doing things throughout the building. And then inspect workmanship. If you're hiring a contractor to install a door, you should have someone in-house that knows how to validate that the work they do is good. I mean, I think this is the best picture for this. You need to have someone inspect the quality of work. If you have a third party coming in to do some type of implementation or technology work, do you have some type of controls to check? I'm sure most companies have controls to check to make sure that they're doing a quality job. But what about physical security controls? That should follow the same stringent review as anything else. And then just executing diligence and common sense. If someone is doing something suspicious or doesn't have a badge and isn't able to prove that they belong there, it doesn't matter how smooth talking they are. You need to challenge and verify that they belong there or they should be doing what they're doing. So I want to thank everyone. If you have any questions, feel free to find me in the bar later, or that's my Twitter handle and my email address. Just feel free, and I'll be in the Lockpick Village tomorrow. And just stop by and ask me any questions you feel like, or if you feel like coming up to me and telling me I'm full of BS or whatever, feel free to do that. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a nice evening.